Okay, hello and welcome to the Small Business Success Story Whispy Moss events. My name is Beth and I am a librarian with the Business Science and Periodicals Department at the Central Library. My fellow librarian from Business Science and Periodicals, Anaya, will be taking care of your questions at the end. We would like to encourage all attendees to visit mpl.org/stay connected and follow MPL on social media to stay updated on all our programs and services. This program will be recorded and a link will be emailed to all attendees after the presentation. A recording will also be available on MPL's page on YouTube. There will be a chance to ask questions of our presenter, Marybeth Schraa of Whispy Moss Events at the end of the program, so be sure to type your questions in the Q&A box. I will now give the floor to Marybeth.
Thank you so much, Beth. I appreciate that. I'm just going to load up my screen here. All right. Okay, perfect. And so I really appreciate being invited to present here today and discuss a little bit more about my business and kind of my business journey. I do want to let you know that while I'm sharing kind of what has helped me and kind of what's worked for my business journey, that every business is unique, it's different. So what works for one is not going to work for another. And so please keep that in mind along the way. All right, so my business is called Whispy Moss Events. So I am a wedding planning and coordination service. I should say event planning and coordination service, but I definitely specialize in wedding events. That is most of, if not all of the clients that I work with. And so, through my business, it definitely has been a learning experience and really kind of has started out with, thinking about what I wanted to achieve in my life. And I have a full-time kind of career on top of this wedding work. And so I kind of identified that I was wanting to kind of, utilize some of the passions I have in my life to maybe create a side business. And so this is what my business is. So I kind of still have my career and I still have my business. And so I kind of find a kind of the best of both worlds. So kind of the background of my business, it's really kind of questioning, like, why did I go into the wedding business of all businesses? And it really came out of my experience with planning my own wedding. I really found that I really had a passion for kind of the design, the planning, the organization, and just kind of how that all these pieces can come together for one day. And it really kind of feels magical and really special. And prior to kind of planning my own wedding, I had, I was kind of that person where people ask, me to help plan their showers or other kind of wedding aspects or, work events. So I was kind of already doing some of those roles and I already had some of that skill set, but it was really kind of coming out during my own wedding of just how much there is that passion underneath of it. So I kind of realized that I have this passion and, maybe I do have these skill sets, in my career. I have to practice a lot of, relationship building, kind of stress management, communication, organization. And I feel like I was able to use that in my wedding. And I'm like, well, I have this basis. I have this passion now that I realize maybe I can optimize on that and kind of funnel that into a business on a regular occurrence. So then I kind of started thinking about, well, okay, so I have this passion, I have this skill set that I can build upon. Is there really kind of a place for me? If I did this in event world, how can I really enter that? And, I really kind of started thinking back on my wedding experience and that when I was planning my wedding, I really wanted to hire a day of coordinator to be there kind of on that day, kind of have my back, kind of manage the timeline. But I realized that the price point for that really was not it was not kind of in my budget. And so that really allowed me to say, you know what, maybe there is that midpoint service opportunity. Like, is there something that'd be more affordable for people that I could kind of enter in the business in this kind of low mid-level range to be another option for couples who are trying to be a little bit more affordable in what they're offering or for what they're wanting for this kind of service. And so that's kind of where kind of then it kind of went into, well, then how do I make this into a business? So there are, again, so many different ways to build a business. For me, I kind of really just started with a like in my mind, like, what is my foundation? And to me, like, I first and foremost like thought, okay, well, what would kind of be a goal of my business? What's kind of my purpose? And again, like that was that like drive, that personal passion. Like I wanted to have another sense of identity in my life. I didn't want to just be kind of that worker in my career and kind of family member. I wanted just a little bit something else to kind of use my spare time with. So I kind of wanted to look at that. And so that's when I kind of looked like, well, if I start a business, what do I want to get out of it? Like, how do I do that? What would be satisfying for me? And to me, it was kind of really looking at that balancing of that passion, that the time I want to give. How can I, you know, create a schedule that would feel fulfilling in my life, like that I could still, be a wife. I can still go to work during the day. How much, like, what do I really want to give into a business in order to like get, what do I want to get out of it? So I kind of really was thinking about what that balance is. And so I really kind of thought about like, oh, all right, so if I'm going into the wedding business, that's going to be probably that's usually a weekend day kind of physical time presence. And so that's going to be April to November during the year. Do I want to give every weekend to this business, which would be then taking away from family time during like a very family oriented time of year. And so for me, like that's where I kind of determined, like when I first go into business, I wanted to kind of create some breather space for myself. And then I'm like, okay, what if I take on weddings every other weekend and try that, um and try that as a way to create a balance. And I also had to consider with this type of industry, like I'm accepting wedding clients and I could be scheduling 2 years out, sometimes even more. So like when you kind of are creating like a structure, a schedule, it's great to be zealous. It's great to give it your all and all your passion, but also you want to be very careful not to overburden yourself, over promise. I always say like under promise, over deliver. And so like you can always add more weddings, you can always add to your schedule. It's very hard to take away or kind of remove off your schedule because then that jeopardizes more of kind of your authenticity of your business. And so I wanted to so I was really thinking about like, well, I've never been in business. How do you be a successful business? And to me, I really kind of looked at, well, a person runs a business. Sorry, I have a visitor here. A person runs a business, and the person is a people's business in the wedding industry. It's about relations, it's about trust, it's about honesty. It's about delivering really great kind of service. And so I really thought about what are my values as a person? What are my values that I want to my business to be known for? And to me, it kind of always comes back to like, I want to work with, like for me personally, I want to work with someone who's really honest, that I can trust, I can rely upon. And that was really important for me to reflect in my own business. And so I kind of created like, put the values to like down on paper, like this will help guide my interactions with the people around me, the clients I work with. And if I always stay true to these values, I can kind of go home at the end of the day. If there were issues, like I can feel okay, like that you know, we've really tried to work this through. You know, I feel like I'm being an honest person. I'm giving honest service. And so that was something that was important to me. So I always find like, what are your personal values? How can that translate into a business? And how can that guide your actions? Because I think, you know, you're a human being, you're gonna make mistakes. We're imperfect world. And so, but I find that when you're honest, when you're transparent about what you do and why you do it, when you communicate, which is a huge, huge part, is being able to like be proactive and sharing. Sometimes oversharing is fine. And because people just want to know like that you hear them, you're there, you're trying to work something out, being honest that, hey, I don't know the answer to this, but I want to like learn and we'll get this together. It just creates more of that ability to trust. And that's how you formulate those relationships. But all that's nothing if you don't follow through. So always that reliability piece. So if you say you're gonna do something, do something. If you don't have time for it, estimate longer time and try to kind of hold yourself accountable. Like say, all right, I'm gonna get you this timeline in 3 weeks, and you put on your schedule within a week. So again, try and set yourself up for success with everything around you. And so, I have kind of create these values to help guide my kind of role and my interactions. And then I'm thinking when I build a company, what do I need to do logistically, like behind the scenes? What is that and what does a business truly need to be considered a business? And so every business has different requirements of that, and so you kind of learn a little bit what's in your industry, but also just kind of the day-to-day pieces, like do I need accounting software? How do I keep track of that? How do I keep track of taxes? Do I need to create some sort of licensure or kind of legal protection like an LLC? Do I need insurance for a business? What does that cost? What about just the maintenance of digital, like your digital presence, like a website, creating the logo? For me, I felt it was important to create an LLC to kind of create more legitimacy to my business. It's a very easy process. That's done through Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions. It costs about $130. You do have to submit information and like how you organize your business. It is something that can be beneficial. I'm not saying you have to do that by any means. But I find it helps also when clients kind of look at you like, oh, you've taken these extra steps to legitimize your business. And it just kind of adds that extra piece. For me, I find it helpful to have a website and a place for everyone to go for information, what I have to offer, what I need to communicate, just kind of that starting point to kind of help field people into kind of my business. I think logos are really important. Again, I think it's that extra piece of just legitimacy. And I think that's definitely worth its investment and to kind of have a brand identity to be able to kind of follow along. And then in probably at every business at some level, there's going to be some sort of contract agreement between you and the service that you're providing, whether you're selling something, whether you're providing a service. Contracts, was something that I needed to kind of determine what do I want kind of written down, protected. I find it important because I've been on both ends. I've been someone who signs contracts and ones who, facilitates them. And so I want I wanted my contracts to be really reflective of both my clients' needs and my personal needs. And that, I feel like it's a really strong point of communication again. The more we communicate, the more we talk about things, the less issues we have down the line because we've been able to have some of those conversations already. So contracts really open up that opportunity to be very clear, transparent about, again, your service and why you do the things you do, kind of what to expect. And then you have it, that, your client be able to agree upon that or disagree, and you talk and negotiate. And I think it's a really wonderful process to be able to do. And so now that I, had the thoughts of how do I, that I wanted to go into business, that I wanted, to, what I wanted to get out of my business, how do I do some of the background pieces to it, what do I kind of create for more of the protective pieces. I'm like, well, how do I then go into targeting my demographic, my clients? Like, how do I actually connect my business to my clients, and how do we get those services started? And so that takes a little bit of like work of really understanding where clients find, kind of like in this sense, where do clients find vendors? I had the, benefit, of course, knowing a little bit of that from my own experience. But, sometimes it's talking with the people around you, talking to some of your, uh, prospective clients, like maybe their friends or family, like where would you kind of go if you needed this information, and kind of going down those avenues to get that information. Um, so it's really trying to research, well, you have a business, but how do you connect with the people that you want to serve? And so it's a lot of research goes into building a company, and being able to kind of navigate it, or kind of go the path, that kind of fits what you need, what you want, and what your business is targeting. Oop, going a little ahead here. All right, so then we have, a really big piece to building a business and having a business is the idea of networking. Networking is really like really being able to connect with other people. A lot of times it's within your own industry. And for example, for me, this is really revolved around working with other vendors. So vendors to me would be the photographers, the DJs, the caterers, the venues. There's a lot of vendors that you work with in a wedding. And to me, every time I connected with a vendor, I'm also advertising me and my service to them. And so you're trying to really be there and advocate for your clients, but also you're trying to portray yourself in a great manner too towards these other people who could be great opportunities for you down the line. For example, I worked with a caterer. We got along, and she wanted my information for kind of a family member. So like, you never know where your next client will come from. So really be careful about always kind of putting your best foot forward with everyone you encounter. And so it kind of goes back to those kind of values. If you're kind of putting out those values to everyone that you work with, it really kind of helps foster a really kind of open, professional, reliable kind of persona, and being able to provide that for not only your clients, but then other people can see that too. So with vendors, the more you are fostering a positive relationship, it really helps bring in more business for yourself. A lot of times, you work with, let's say I work with a photographer, and I really enjoy how they speak with the client, their communication level, the advice and suggestions they give. Those are things that I kind of take note of, because there are going to be times where a client will ask me, hey, do you have any recommendations for a certain vendor? And I'm like, you know what? this certain vendor really stood out to me because of these things. This could be one suggestion. I often find that, I look for vendors that have those kind of similar values that I like, that I kind of value as well. And those are kind of the ones that I do kind of stay connected with a little bit more. I see a little bit more of that extra oomph and things that I resonate in my business, and I would kind of want extended, if that makes sense. And so I always kind of remember that when I make a recommendation for a vendor, it also does reflect back on me and my business. And so it's always being cautious, like, don't just recommend to recommend. Make sure you're doing full vetting. Kind of work with someone before you say, yes, you should absolutely go to them. Because if they're not up to par, kind of starts questioning, like, well, if that was satisfactory to you, maybe that does question that person's opinion of your service. So really just be, cautious about not just making recommendations to make recommendations, but really develop partnerships and relationships where you can really speak on the services that they're offering, because you maybe see it firsthand, you've had experience with it, you've done a little bit more due diligence, and I think that's important. And because then it kind of goes back kind of all around, where you're recommending vendors and then the vendors are recommending you and your services, and it can be really a beautiful way to kind of grow your clientele and your business, and really being able to foster more of that success. And another thing with kind of being able to access vendors is that you kind of learn, along the way of, how the clients are finding them. You find extra ways that you can kind of optimize, getting connected with clients along the way. So really taking those, not only having the relationships, but you get some also information, which can be really valuable and helpful. So besides networking, I'd say a really, really strong piece of business is going to be the social media game. The power of word of mouth cannot be understated. It is perhaps one of the most important pieces. So really, it kind of comes back to, again, those relationships that you build. People want to be able to help other people. Like, yes, I recommend you going to this business. I really enjoyed them for this reason. And these happen in conversations, not just, posts of, reviews or feedback. These are just everyday conversations that people have. And really that's mostly how I get my referrals. So I really do not underestimate the power of social media. So I really encourage you to really have a strong online presence. For me, I identified early on that, wedding couples really participate in Facebook groups, especially there's ones for our specific area. And, I entered into those groups. Anytime someone was looking for, hey, I need an idea or suggestion for a day of coordinator, I would introduce myself and kind of let them know about my business. That really kind of starts rolling of, getting inquiries and getting those conversations started with people, getting those bookings. And then it kind of creates this cycle of, all right, people are coming in, having these inquiries, we're talking, people are booking me, I'm completing weddings. They're, still in these groups because they are, still want to help out other people, still in that wedding mode. And then they are recommending me to other kind of couples as well. So it's like this really strong referral type system that can develop. So really being cautious about your online presence, being there, being accessible, having a quick response rate. Again, think about you, and like you would want people to respond as quick as you can. And that's really important, especially if you have like 20 other people that they might go to if you don't answer quick enough. So just being able to have an online presence is really going to help boost that business pace. Now, not only, being actually in those chats and those groups, on Instagram, all of those pieces, make sure you have a social media presence on your platforms too. So like I'd suggest having like a Facebook page, Instagram page. I can have, of course, more things. But people really go to these pages for a lot more information, to kind of see more of those photos, your impact. That's a really great way for them to obtain information. And I personally need to up my social media presence. I'll definitely admit a weakness of mine, that I definitely am going to be focusing on going forward. But the research that I've currently done that I plan to kind of integrate more is that people really want to see what's behind a business. Again, it's all about relationships. People want to feel connected to you. People like to know the story behind things and people and businesses. And so social media really offers an avenue for that. Like, what makes them connect with you? Like, how can they connect with you? And sometimes that's in some of those, they get to know your personality. You get to see a little bit of the how-tos. You get all of that little information and bits that you wouldn't normally get. And I think that's important to kind of be starting to put forth, because it creates that human connection, that genuineness, which people crave, especially when you're working in like a service industry. They just want to feel connected to you. So really, when you have a business, it's a good idea to say, at what point is this successful? And so, I measure success in many different ways. And I think in the most traditional sense, it's how much money are you making? How much profit are you making? But I really think that there's a little bit more to do it. You know, I think it's a combination of course, of the financial aspect. I think there is a measure of, okay, how many bookings do you get? How many inquiries that really come in of people wanting to book? The reviews and feedback that you receive, and really kind of this combination of those things can really kind of show you what people think about your business. And I think when you get then more of the positive remarks and statements and feedback, you're seeing that reflected in the numbers. It can really kind of help show you that there is a measure of success. But I think a really big piece to feeling successful is, do you feel fulfilled? Like, is the work that you're doing enjoyable? Like for me, this is a side business, right? So I created this out of a sense of passion. So if it's no longer a sense of passion, is it really a success for me? And so that's always something that I'm, questioning and monitoring, because that is a big piece. And that's a big drive to me to give my best every day, is when I still have that passion. So, and I still have that. And it's really important to kind of understand what it is that drives you, what keeps it fulfilling for you, and how all these pieces come together. I would say, really, don't be afraid of that imperfection. It is how we grow. It's how we learn. It's really relatable. Like, people, no, nothing's perfect all the time. Take negative feedback in stride. It's an opportunity to learn and grow and make changes. Um, you know, if you get like any negative feedback on your kind of on your sites, think about how you respond to those things, because people really look at, okay, this happened. How do you approach when you have something negative? And that can really be a positive turn for you, depending on how you respond to it. And just think about how all of this kind of comes together for you. So overall, I know I've talked about, a little bit more in general, everything, but really, if we're creating a business, it's really, for me, identifying an interest and skills that you can optimize, like build on something you already have versus thinking that you have to create something new within yourself. Um, you have to learn so much already, give yourself a break and kind of optimize and build upon your strengths. Consider how a business would fit into your life. I really think it's important for our self kind of care and functioning to not overburden ourselves. Like I mentioned earlier, that the more weekends I give to weddings, the less I have to give to my family. And so I'm willing, like, find it, consider just like what that balance is for you. And it's okay to protect that, even when you want a business that's successful. Again, the level of success is different for every person. So then kind of identify structure, legalities, amount of investment you want to put into this, whether that be financial, time, effort, just all of that. Think about your values and um, how that can drive your interactions with people and your business as a whole. How can you nurture relationships with your clients and others along the way? How can you seek feedback? How can you practice that self-care along the way? And ultimately, just make adjustments as you go, because you're going to learn what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what you may have started without. You're like, yeah, I could use this now. And that's okay. Just make those steps along the way. It's definitely an evolution that happens. Well, I really appreciate everyone's time in talking about that, and just being here to talk about that with me today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marybeth. And I am going to go ahead and open it up for questions. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Anaya.
I don't have any questions in the chat, so if you all have anything to ask, please add your questions now.
Okay, well, if there isn't anything, we'll go ahead and conclude everything. Thank you for attending this evening's Small Business Success Story program. Thank you so much to Marybeth and to Anaya. Oh, we have a question. Yay.
Question. Okay. Margot, she says, how large does an income have to be when you form an LLC and report to taxes? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So when you create an LLC, you don't have to have any kind of income limit, to my understanding, to actually create the LLC. The LLC actually costs $130 in Wisconsin. So you just have to pay that fee in order to obtain the LLC. Now, in terms of taxes, that was a trickier thing for me. I actually ended up getting QuickBooks along the way. There's a free version, or through my taxes, that I kind of registered with and then kind of paid along the way. And that kind of helps calculate the taxes that I would have to pay for the amount of income that I'm generating with the business. So it kind of, there's not an easy answer in terms of that. I would definitely recommend, if you are going to start a business, to work with a tax accountant or work with some sort of software to kind of help monitor that for you. Otherwise, they can, like, at the end of the year, you can also kind of file your taxes. And I'd recommend though, like keeping a third of your business income in kind of a separate file, just to kind of be able to pay those taxes along the way.
Okay. She says, thank you for your answer.
You're welcome.
Did anyone else have any questions? Marybeth, I have a question.
Sure thing.
Did you have a solid business plan before you went ahead and started everything, as far as like obtaining your LLC and everything?
So I didn't have like a formal business plan like written down prior to kind of me obtaining my LLC. It kind of was a little bit of a learn as you go experience when I in the very early days. Like I took on a wedding first, and then I created an LLC, obtained their like this weddings feedback and review to be able to kind of utilize as I built my website and like my Google page and like my Facebook. So like I kind of did a little bit of both at the same time. The LLC doesn't need like a formal plan submitted. They just need you to submit in articles of organization, which is pretty much how you choose to structure your business and like who makes decisions. Like, would that be a sole proprietor? Would that be, kind of in a sense like a board of people that would do that, like manager, and manager kind of based. So, and they kind of give you some information on their website about what those kind of terminologies mean. But formally, I only needed to kind of submit those articles of organization for the LLC to kind of come through, and then the rest of the business structure is kind of more known to me on the back end. And I do want to say that the business is just me at this moment. If I were to expand and hire more individuals, I think at that point I'd put more kind of formal policies in place, kind of written manuals, like those types of things, to have more of that kind of structure to the business itself.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Any other kind of questions, concerns?
I have a question for you, Marybeth.
Absolutely.
Where did you come up with the name Whispy Moss?
It was just, I was sitting at the table thinking about different terms with my husband, like what would I call my business? And I just thought of different things that, were kind of fun for me. And we kind of explored meaningful things, kind of wedding related terms. It kind of went back to our wedding because that was kind of the essence of why I went into the business. And I kept kind of wanting like I wanted a very whimsical wedding. We put like moss all over our art, like our arch, and kind of a lot of wispy kind of plants type things. So we just threw around a bunch of terms, and this one just kind of resonated with me. And that's kind of how it came to be in terms of the name.
That's really cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other kind of questions? It's okay if there's not.
Okay. Well, I think we're gonna call it. And again, I want to thank everybody for coming, especially to our presenter, Marybeth, and my partner in crime, Anaya. And definitely continue to keep up with all of MPL's offerings by visiting mpl.org and follow MPL's social media for even more great upcoming programs. Be safe and we'll see you soon. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Beth. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.